Okay. Hi, everybody. I hope that you have been doing well this week. It's me, Madam Onça, and this is session 4 of our deep dive series that we're doing here. Some of you will have seen that I sent out a message. This, again, is the last session of these 4 that we were doing. Those 4 came after the quarantine series, which was very much foundational material. So I'm going to take a week off next week to, oh, and there goes that camera. I'll fiddle with it. We're going to take a week off next week to celebrate World Tarot Day. I'm actually going to be teaching 2 workshops locally online through RVA Coven. I'll make sure the information is posted somewhere for you. And those are in honor of World Tarot Day and World Tarot Week. The next week is the 27th of May, and we will start again. So if you're interested in jumping in, come on in. We've got more sessions coming up. If you want to be part of them, by all means, let me know. I'm delighted to keep working with you, and I'm learning more every time about how to do this in the brave new world that we live in. Today's session is, it's about the big questions. By that, I don't mean the most important questions, but they are the ones you are most likely to ask or be asked as a reader. They are about love, money, and health. All of those things immediately open up a series of ethical issues, and we're going to spend a chunk of time today talking about those. When folks wash up at my table looking to deepen their understanding of any given situation, they usually want guidance in one of these 3 main areas. Money and career are more neutral for you as a reader, but explorations of love and health both bring up some significant ethical considerations for you as a reader and service to others, and this is true if you're reading for yourself as well. You will find, if you poke around on the internets and talk to other folks that you know that may work with the cards, many professional readers or committed readers arrive at some kind of code of ethics, and they may state them on their website and their contracts, their place of business, or if you ask them, they may just be glad to talk to you about what they've arrived at. Those codes are unique to every reader and every individual, but they generally address the same commonalities. If digging deep into it for yourself seems like more than you need at the moment, that's totally fine. You can adopt sort of a broad principle while you learn, and that could be, the golden rule. It could be Wheaton's law. It could be the Wiccan Rede or the Thelemic law. Or the chaos magic principle that everything is permissible. You can decide what works for you, but I do encourage you in the long run to dig in to this opportunity to figure out what you think, what you believe. Some of the things, for example, that readers may choose to not work with. Some tarot readers will not read tarot cards for minors. They will not teach tarot to minors. Some readers will not read for pregnant people or will discourage pregnant people from doing tarot readings. That was a shock and surprise to me. I don't know about you. Some people will not, they categorically will not read about any kind of health matters. They will not really diagnose anything that merits professional help, anything that seems to need doctors, lawyers, therapists, psychiatrists. Some readers will not work or will not work well with relationships that are exploring poly dynamics. Some readers will not do readings that pertain to fertility or death. Some readers will not address curses in readings. Some readers will not use the cards to do anything they consider spying on the feelings or motivations of people that are not present or consenting. So as you can see, this already opens it up to a lot of big questions. And if those make you wonder, by all means, drop it in the chat. We can try to check in about it at the end. At this point, you might be wondering, what do people do readings about? Most readers that I have spoken with on this matter do welcome queerance of everything, irrespective of race, gender, orientation, faith, etc. Most readers that I have spoken with on some level subtly protect themselves when they're doing readings energetically from needy or risky clients. Sometimes as a reader, you're catching people in a party mindset, and sometimes you're catching them not at the high point of their lives energetically, and they may be messy unconsciously or otherwise. Most readers that I know do commit to be honest about what they see in the cards and also diplomatic. Most readers do attempt to offer hope and empowerment in their readings, even for difficult readings, to really give the person you're reading for, be it yourself, family, friend, or client, a sense of how you can make a change. And most readers will offer confidentiality in a reading unless it is in the case of physical or like legal danger. So these things don't often come up, but those are important things to note. So let's take a minute to consider the matter of reading, again, for minors and pregnant people. I was really surprised by that because I personally don't have any issues with reading for either of those groups in the appropriate setting. In part, I think, I can't speak for why everybody makes this choice, but for folks that are not comfortable with that, I think it comes down to how you believe tarot cards work. If you believe that the cards work because you are opening yourself energetically to outside forces, be they angels or demons or spirits or whatever, what have you, then inviting minors and in utero people into that experience may be something that gives you pause. Can those people consent to that interaction? I don't approach reading cards that way, and this is where it may be worth you considering what you think is happening here. For me, I think of the cards as a tool and an opportunity for me to deepen my own intuition and my ability to connect with people, my ability to access the information that we all have, and we're not usually able to tune into. That being the case, I don't feel that in reading cards for youngsters and so forth that I am putting them in energetic harm's way. So just consider your feelings about that. Also, some folks in some traditions, when they're reading cards, they are, calling on their own ancestors for guidance. So they may have a different perspective. They may be thinking very much of themselves as, bringing their allies to the occasion of reading cards. So there's that. I will say another aspect, of course, is we live in a litigious society. So if you decide you want to read cards for people's kids, of course, a kid can even be a person who is, 17 years old and more, being unsupervised with other people's kids, even in a fortune-telling booth, like in a lighthearted setting, does present a legal risk to you. And should you be willing to read for chaperoned minors, meaning somebody, or somebody comes to you and they've got friends and family there, you need to consider that they may have issues come up as a young person that you need to read around in order to protect that kid's privacy. Does that make sense? So you can just take a little time to read up on, sort of the issues around the satanic panic, both in the past and the present, in order to make a conscious decision about what you want to do there. I have no problems reading for young people in circumstances where I feel safe from litigion, from the litigious society. And I have no problem with teaching kids to use cards, but you have to understand cards, like TV, are available to express a broad range of meanings. And, like I work with the gummy bear tarot with my little kid when they want to, but we don't sit down and have the kind of conversations that I have with you. It's much more like we go through the cards and we discuss the pictures and what people are doing. And, this card might come up for this or that. But I mean, when I was a little kid, as I've said before, I would get the playing cards out, the face cards from the regular playing cards, and just play house with them, essentially. So I encourage my kid to have a lighthearted sense with the cards and also respect, but we're not doing deep readings. So, you just need to come to a deliberate place with this, particularly if you are ever around young people. Also, as far as the ethical considerations go, be clear, if you feel it's necessary, that you are not a doctor or lawyer, unless of course you are. When you're giving a reading, if there are signs that professional help is needed, then you should always refer people to, someone who's qualified to help them. My original tarot mentor, Kate Nordstrom, just kept a Rolodex. So she would be like, oh, based on the cards that I'm seeing, perhaps you should talk to my friend over, at the therapy place, or maybe you need to go see a general practitioner or whatever. So very harmlessly be a conduit to guide those people towards the care and help that they might actually need. Okay, so that touches on the ethical questions. Again, I encourage you to poke around in your own mind on the internet and see what you can see as far as that goes. This is the part. So we're going to be talking about matters of love, sex, and relationship. This is one of those questions that comes up most of the time when you're working in readings. As we've talked about before, if you're in like a party type setting, the spreads that we're working with right now may not be appropriate. A party type setting, meaning, you're at a corporate gig, or, it's like New Year's Eve and you've got a whole bunch of your friends there. Remember when we could all be in one place? You've got a whole bunch of your friends in one place. And, you're not there to spend an hour over the cards with one person. The spreads that I'm going to work with you today, these are a little bit more of the deep dive spreads. It assumes that you've got half an hour or an hour to spend with somebody. Party spread, think 3 cards pull. That's my advice there. When it comes to love, sex, relationship type readings, they generally come to, what is really going on in this relationship, or some sort of a choice question. Should I do this or that? Should I do this guy or should I do this girl? Some kind of choice question. I generally personally start with a 3 or 5 card dinner party what's up spread, as we spoke about in the earlier session. For anybody who wasn't here for that, the dinner party spread basically is an opportunity to, without differentiating based on location, you're just pulling out a handful of cards according to your personal reading protocol, and you are saying, hey friends, I've invited these 3 to 5 cards over to see what they think about my situation. So you start with those, you flip the cards over, you take some time to look and see if there's any patterns. This is a sort of a, as it is here, it's an overhead snapshot of what's going on for you or your friend relative to the question. You're looking to see if there's an abundance of any particular number, of any particular suit. Are there lots of people cards? As far as the suit goes, for example, if this is a relationship spread and there are no cups in it, then that is a telling moment, and you want to make a note of that. If somebody thinks they're in a relationship, they want a relationship spread, and it is all swords, there's something else going on here. Swords is about decision-making, boundaries, and communication, not about the feels. Swords are not even about physical passion, which Pentacles might come up, or Wands might come up to speak somewhat to those. Again, you're looking to see if this person thinks that they're in a lovey, sexy place and all of the cards reflect something else. Make a note of it compassionately. So here you flipped these cards over. You've observed. Are there patterns? Number, suit. Is it lots of people cards? Are there a preponderance of any particular anythings? I will say, if there's lots of people cards, then I usually think, what is going on for this person? I mean, how many people are there in their life that have something to say about what they're doing? Are they in the most busybody office in the world? Is their family super judgmental and engaged in their daily life? If you see lots of people cards, again, you have to wonder why. Now, once we've got this dinner party spread and you have a sense of like, hey, ooh, yay, there's Sako. Come on in, my friend. Welcome. Point. And you have a sense. You've gone through these cards with yourself, your friend, your client, whoever. At this point, if it's a matter of choice, if they're saying, should I do this or that, then I will add another line above these cards, and it will either be a single card for each option plus a wild card. So let's imagine you're saying, well, what about if I go with, this guy? What about if I go with this girl? And again, you may be feeding these cards, however you like to read. Are you feeding them off the top, off the bottom? Are you pulling them out of the fan? And then you're saying, well, what am I not knowing here? And then there's that wild card option. As you can see, you already have a zillion cards down. You would flip these over, and again, looking for patterns, looking for systems, and wondering, what does this have to say about, should you go with option A? If you try to deepen your relationship or undertake the hookup or whatever your question is with so-and-so, what does that look like? What does this look like? And the wild card is there to give you that bit of advice because there may be a whole other situation up the pike that you don't even know about. So at this point, you already have a ton of cards on the table. If there are further clarifying questions that come up at this point, you know, maybe the person goes, oh, all of this looks great, but there's something over here and I'm very concerned about that 10 of swords or whatever it is. You can pull additional cards to say, tell me more about this card you have questions about. And that can really look like anything. At this point, this starts to become very organic. So far, kind of systematic, boxy sort of shape, but it could literally be, I have questions about this guy, pull a few more. We're gonna go right off the frame here. Pull a few more cards about that. For me, in general, at the point where there's 12 cards on the table, you have so much information, I would say, try not to pull any more cards unless something flies out of the pack, unless you get a volunteer. And again, you start looking for patterns. You can start to see, you know, are there patterns amongst these rows of spreads that you pull? You know, are you looking at, for strangely, there's a ton of animals represented, or all the horizon lines in these cards seem to match up and they all seem to be driving towards this one car on the left-hand side. This is where you really have to move into what I have described for you before as the spongy place in your intuition. If you're, I want to say naturally intuitive, if you're psychic, if you have a lot of confidence, maybe it will be easy for you to do this. Most folks find they have to flex a little bit to lean into learning some comfort level around extrapolating how these images fit together. If you're a dancer, you know when you were first learning, you learn to move, you learn to move, you learn to move, you learn to move. And the hard part as a dancer maybe wasn't learning the moves per se, it was learning the transitions. It was learning the ways that the movements would fit together to create something with cohesion and flow, right? Tarot is like that for those of you that can respond to the dance analogy or perhaps any kind of athletic analogy. At this point, it becomes about figuring out the transitions, the spongy places in between the cards. So you can keep stacking cards as you need to. Now, so this assumes that there was a choice. It was, you know, move to this town or run off with this person or whatever. If it's not about choices, I'm going to swoop these ones back up. If it's really more a matter of, you know, we did the initial look-see, tell me what's going on, and then you're asking the next question. The next level of question might be, okay, well, that's what my relationship is doing now. Talk to me about how my relationship is going to fare in 6 months relative to my being in grad school or whatever. And at that point, you may build an additional row. You flip those cards over. Once again, you employ those human skills of searching for pattern. Just a minute, please. Come on in, little lost lambs. Great. If you're here, if you could turn off your video and your audio so that you can just see what we're doing here. We're building some spreads. Okay. So once again, you've got this whole other row. You can build another row. You can keep stacking it up. But again, when you've got a million cards on the table, at some point, you're going to realize you've got so much information. By the time there's 12, 15 cards on the table, that is a full hour's worth of interpretation in general. Again, if you have questions about this process, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will do my best to catch them. But now I'm going to clear my table here and we're going to talk about some career-related spreads. I should dial back. We had a whole session where we talked about a couple spreads, 1, 3, 5, 7 card spreads and so forth. There's an infinite number of spreads. There's no right or wrong way that you can pull. These are just some suggestions. Again, when it comes to love, relationships, everything we just talked about, you really need to make decisions about the ethics of reading for the person in front of you rather than reading for a person who's not present. You know, you just have to feel for what feels right to you. You will know in your gut if somebody's asking you to do something that doesn't feel good. Also, I have to tell you that sometimes when you are reading for someone, maybe their relationship is not in a good place. Maybe the relationship is not, maybe it's not good, maybe it's not stable, maybe it's not safe, maybe there are extenuating circumstances, like there's safety issues or mental health challenges that are really prohibitive. Sometimes it is very conspicuous that a person's relationship choices are not working well for them, and you can see that as a reader who's been invited into their physical space, into their emotional space, and into the space of their reading. Some readers will never say, you need to break up, you need to get a divorce, because perhaps that is not your place, even if you can see it plain as a nose in your face. Because unless someone comes to you and says, I'm getting a divorce, this is what I need information about what's going to happen, they need to arrive at that conclusion without being told by you. Because if they haven't arrived there on their own, they may not thank you for putting that option on the table. That doesn't mean that as a person in service to others that you don't want to you're not trying to avoid helping them, but you may have to say, I can really see there's a lot going on here. It looks to me like your relationship may need to go through some significant evolution right now to work for you. Use your very best words to help someone either come to terms with what they need to do or find a way to be safer in what they're going to do, no matter what your opinion, if that makes sense. This is the part where it really becomes about diplomacy. And diplomacy, of course, is finding the kindest way to reach the best result in this case. So, love, relationships, and so forth. Now we're going to move over to the concept of career. So I'm going to swoop some of these off here. Again, this is one of the most like career, even, second career. Maybe somebody, has a day job, but they also want to be a writer and they spend a lot of time writing. Career is a loose term to mean, please give me some suggestions or some information about how the places where I am ambitious are going to play out. So frankly, most of the same shape of spread will work, because career issues typically come down to needing to get a big picture of what's happening, needing to make some long-term plans about what's happening, or needing to make choices about direction and focus. So all of the spreads that we previously used there in the old love option can totally work for you. However, in this case, you may remember our interrobang spread that we worked with in a previous week, which is the WTAF spread, or the WTF spread for short. That is a great way to get a sense of what's happening if the question that the person brings to you, or your question, I'm sorry if I often presume you're reading for others. You may be reading for yourself. If the question that you are bringing to the table is about needing to fill in some missing information, this spread is great, because what this spread does in particular, it brings you some clarity about where things are legitimately wrong, where things are legitimately missing. So the WTAF spread, to remind us all, this typically is a 6-card spread. Again, picking the cards however you might. Maybe you're feeding them off the top, maybe you're feeding them off the bottom, maybe you are pulling them out of a fan. However you have decided that you most want to be able to read the cards. It starts with the card that says, this is me in my situation. Make sure you can see that on the action cam. This is the card that crosses you. Oops. Crosses you, meaning the thing that is interfering, the thing that is in your way. Then it becomes, so that is what the actual. This is the card here that says, what is real in this situation? What is real in my work environment, my career, my ambition? What is really happening? This is the thing. This is our F-bomb. This is the F card. It is the what is truly wrong in this situation. Then we have, this is the card that offers you some information about what there is yet to be known. You know, is there somebody else moving into your department? Is it, you know, that you haven't been getting that promotion because you are unable to get along with your the person right above you in the hierarchy and so forth. And then this last card offers you that we want to say the solution. It's the action card is really what it is. It is the card that says, knowing all the things that you think you know about your situation at work, consider this card one to act on. So there's our WTF spread to review. Feel free to chime in with some questions in the chat if you need to. We are going to scooch right along now to health, which is usually heavy. Now, when I say that questions of health are usually heavy, that's a misnomer. Typically, if somebody comes to you for advice, it's because they have questions or they have concerns, right? There's something there that weighs on them, some uncertainty. So it's not that the health questions are always bad. It may be, I've been feeling great. Is this trend going to continue for me? A question to ask yourself if somebody is here looking for a health reading. Health looks like lots of things. There's mental health, there's physical health, there's perhaps spiritual health if you believe in that sort of thing. There's, you know, the health of your immediate environment, you know, your sort of family or tribe and so forth. So, you know, what kind of health are you talking about? The health that readers sometimes are squeamish about is really typically physical health. And that is because you don't want to be caught flat-footed, you know, being misunderstood to tell someone they have cancer or something when you are not qualified to make that judgment. What you can do in a health reading is you can say, what's happening for you now? If someone comes to you and says, you know, I've been coping with diverticulitis and I need some sense of how this affects my life, you're not telling them what medications to take or not take. You're not telling them that the power of positive healing, of thinking, is going to heal everything. But what you can do is you can give them a sort of a, what do I need to know in order to manage this as a holistic individual, right? That is your job as a person in service, is to try to make somebody feel empowered. So for this, I'm going to recommend that we use that Pentacle +1, which is what we used, we experimented with last time around. The Pentacle +1 is basically a 5-pointed star. You can start in any corner you like, to be clear. The important part is that you remember what that corner was. And that +1 in this case is what I'm going to call the Go Make Action card. This is a bit of a family joke, because when my husband was on tour, he was traveling in Czech with a Czechish acrobat who would, in the morning, he would have a cup of coffee, have a shot of vodka, and say, vodka, then go make action. So the Go Make Action card is the, once you have all this information, what are you going to do about it? You shuffle, you inquire, the question is stated, and so forth. Once you're there, prepare for that Pentacle +1, and you're going to pick a corner. And as you place them, this is a reading where it matters which card you are putting in which corner. In other words, being cognizant of the stations as you put them down actually matters. You're going to go earth, air, fire, water, spirit, and the Go Make Action card. So this is my very tight approximation of a 5-pointed star that you can see here. When you flip over these cards and you remember where you started, that Earth card, that is how your health-related question pertains to your situation in terms of your security, your finances, your physical body, how you need to manage all of those things in order to function as best as you possibly can in this current circumstances. Likewise, when you come to the air, of course, we're just following the suits as they're laid out, sort of classic Western tradition. So air is how this health situation impacts your decision-making, your choices, your clear communication. Fire, we go over to fire. That is, again, career, ambitions, productivity. How does managing this health situation impact that aspect of your life? So here we are trying to diagnose, not the person's spleen, or their cilia or their alveoli, but we are trying to look at them as a whole organic entity. We come to water. Water is how the situation affects your relationships. For some people, of course, that's also, your creativity, your emotional life. Spirit, how it affects your deep work and the work that you are here in the world to do, like the soul stuff, if you want to think of it that way. And once again, in the center, we have that go make action card. Like, how can you improve, support, nurture yourself in order to be more resilient and durable as you are coping with the health questions that are on the table. If you have questions about any of that, feel free to throw it in. Again, Pentacle +1. It's a nice way to see the entire person. And I love that, like the pentacle, the symbolism of the 5-pointed star, it represents literally the entire body of the person, limbs, figure, and all that good stuff. So there's that. This is where we're going to take a moment to consider the question of fertility. Also a very sensitive subject when it comes up for people. Sometimes people come with that to a reading. As I said earlier, some people will never want to speak to that question of fertility. Okay, Kelly has a great question, which is, what is the middle card in the pentacle? This one right here, this is the go make action card. So we've got earth, air, fire, water, spirit. Basically, it's the, what are you going to do about it? How do you support yourself? How do you nurture the body during this health question? Does that make sense? So it's the actionable item. Tarot is really great at diagnosing what's happening, but if you don't ask it, so what do I do now? You've just gotten a really beautiful description. It's like somebody drew you in still life, but didn't give you a manual for what to do next. So it helps if you are explicit with the cards, but what do I do about it? So go make action. So back to that sensitive subject of fertility. This can be a very emotional subject for people. Maybe they do want families, maybe they don't want families, and by which I mean maybe they want to build a family in their body. And as we discussed, you are not a doctor unless you are. Unless you're a fertility specialist, I would encourage you to be very cautious in this area. However, when aces come up, sometimes it is quite conspicuous when the ace comes up that it is the harbinger of babydom. Never assume that the person that you're reading for does or does not welcome that. You don't want to be like, oh, congratulations, this looks like a baby, because maybe that is the last thing they want, or vice versa. What I will do when the aces come up in a way that is suggestive to me, I will say, I will let them know. The Ace of Pentacles, for example, suggests the start of a new hands-on practical undertaking in your life. It could be anything from businesses to babies. So know that as you're moving forward in this time. Like, find a way to put them on notice that that's what the cards are suggesting. Just because it looks like a time of possible fertility or possible peril for somebody, it's not written in stone, right? That is how I believe the cards work. I believe that they suggest what is likely to happen based on what is happening for someone now or how they choose to live. But you never want anyone to feel like they don't have any choices. The point of tarot isn't to prepare yourself to steel your resolve for for the future that is coming for you. The point is to say, how can I influence the probable outcomes? So fertility is a real sensitive subject in the health department to think of on that front. Okay, so this is the part where I invite you 100% to chime in with any questions. That is the bulk of the material that I have prepared for you today. I'm going to need to end a few minutes earlier because there's another show right after me today, but I'm definitely here for your questions if you want to pop them in the chat. Also, while that's happening, Uh, I will reiterate for the folks that are just getting here now, this is the last in this session of 4 weeks of deep dive that we've got. Next week, I'm teaching a level 1 and a level 2 through online through RVA Coven. I'll post that information. Those classes are like $10, so you can't beat the price. And that is for World Tarot Day, which is next week. I usually teach a workshop in North Carolina during that time for World Tarot Day. So instead I'll be teaching it here from Awesome Town. You can contact them on Facebook if you want to register. That's again through RVA Coven. But the next week we will be opening up another 4-week session for anybody who is interested. It's going to be later because this class was set at 6 to accommodate some people's quarantine schedules. Of course, not everybody can meet during this time, so we're going to scooch it later for folks who love this time. Remember, we can get you the archived links. But starting on the 27th, I'm going to have a basics class, like laying down those fundamentals at 7, and then we'll do some of these deep dive topics at 8. So you can do one or do both, and I'm very keen to hear what subjects you would like covered. I love doing basics. I love teaching people the fundamentals. I feel the same way as a dance teacher. I'm happy to give people, I love that space. I love to be able to open a creative space for people. But it's been really exciting to get to do some of this deeper material. And I just need to know where you want to go with it. Yes, you can absolutely watch videos in post, as it says. Let me see. Jill is asking me about, it's off topic for today's lesson, but she has a hard time with memorization. I'm doing a card a day, but I'm still not remembering. It may not be a problem for everybody. So if you are working on the card a day, actually, this is a great question, Jill, because it allows us to look back over, some of us have been together for a month. Some of us have been here for the duration of quarantine, popping in and spending time together. Memorization for me didn't come until I started really writing about what was coming up for me. If you're not a journaler, then that may not be a resource for you. But as I started writing the cards down and going, today is the 13th of May, I got the damn 5 of Pentacles again, then it would start to become personal to me. The cards are just like people that you meet. Like some of them are immediately memorable, but there's a whole lot of cards in the crowd, and some of them you just have to keep meeting them over and over again. One of the things that may help memorization wise, I wish I had those notes with me right now. It helps with the memorization, even if you can't interpret from the picture, if you can't remember what we've talked about, if you think aces are beginnings, 10 is almost too much of a good thing, the cards ramp up as they go through, with the 5s being very chaotic in the middle. So the first thing you can do is look at the card and go, oh, it's a wand. That's going to be something about careers and ambition. You've just narrowed it to one arena of your life. And then if you look at the number and you go, oh, it's a 6. Okay, that's a certain amount of like accomplishment. I'm partway through the journey from raw novice to the fullest experience. So if you look at the numbers, if you're numerically inclined, that may help you to feel like you're getting some headway. Hilariously, Jill, I had been belly dancing for years, never knowing how to count. Before I took a class from you. And I was like, if I want to take classes with Jill, I'm going to have to really learn how to count and dance at the same time. So I think that actually helped me to develop an awareness of numbers that I never had when I was just following the bouncy butt. The same as I never really paid attention to the numbers in tarot until I did. And then it was enormously helpful. So if you look at them as sort of a level of volume, this card is turned all the way up to 11. That may help. With the majors, most of them you will learn to recognize them because they're big, bold statements. The majors are like the emojis of the tarot world. They're like pretty blunt. There's just a few, I think, like Justice and Judgment, where it gets a little squishy. I hope that's helpful. Advice of doing readings for yourself. For me, Talkie Gemini, it helps if I actually still say everything out loud. I need to say it in order to hear it. So the biggest things, anytime you do a reading, get clear on what the question is. If you're doing a reading for yourself, for myself, it helps to make a little bit more of a ritual space than I normally create. Like, I'm taking a little bit of time. I've literally cleared my desk. I've made a little bit more of a sacred space, as it were, or practical working space. I've cleaned the lab. And then I will try to be very clear. I need to do a reading about what's happening with health. I need to do a reading about what's happening with my kids' health. I knew a reading about what's happening with my kids' health in the next 6 months. I need to do a reading about what's happening with my kids' health in the next 6 months and what I can do about it. Like, it's, again, continuing to put some brackets that give you some clarity may help. You still have to interpret the cards relative to that, which of course is the hard part. That is the squishy, swampy spot. That's about understanding letting your intuition flow in to help you understand how the things fit together. But readings for yourself, getting super clear about what it is you're doing. Again, for me, I find saying it out loud, even if you're reading out of a book, may help. Continuing to look for those patterns where you go, every time I do readings for, my mother-in-law, it's all swords. Maybe this person spends too much time in their head. That kind of thing. So just coming back to it with some good work habits and see if that helps. Any other questions before we end for the day? I've had such a great time with everybody. Messy little array over here. And I apologize for the technical challenges we had at the beginning of class, but I'm still trying to master this business of using more than one camera so that I can show as well as tell. So I guess that's it. Anybody else? This was awesome. Well, thank you, Sako. So, oh, you know what? If you want to pop your cameras on for a second, just so I can wave goodbye to everybody, that would be great. Yay, there's April. Hi. Thank you, and thank you. Y'all have been so great. Hopefully I'll see a bunch of you next week for the RVA Coven classes, level 1 and level 2. Hi, Kazuki. And otherwise, for World Tarot Day. And otherwise, hopefully I'll see you the next week. And I will be back to teach you whatever you want to know. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Oh, thank you. Bye.